Hi, welcome. It is lovely to be with you and to have these few minutes together in the midst of everyone's busy life. I do not take for granted the time that you most generously give here. The time is your most valuable asset. And I hope that the time you spend here gives you a valuable break that allows you to return to your responsibilities with renewed energy and vigor, with a sense of well-being and even optimism. That is the whole point of meditation. It is meant to help us maximize the time we have. It asks us to focus, to be present, to experience this moment before it is gone and can never again be relived. I know how often I find myself absolutely consumed by some issue, conflict, disappointment, or surprise that absolutely takes me out of the present moment and into some alternate space where all I am doing is turning the thing over and over in my mind while losing track of time and place. I have to imagine that we all have that experience. Hopefully, over time, the practice of staying in the moment, of breathing in and out with focus and attention, helps us to minimize those moments of absence with more of our lives lived in the conscious present. The practice can help us gain a certain distance from, and thus perspective on, whatever is claiming our attention. It helps us separate out what is not about us, that we tend to over-identify with and make all about us. Or it helps us proportionalize our anxieties into manageable thoughts and issues. Given that this is a time of oversized concerns and issues, let us take our first break to breathe. And just a reminder to find a comfortable position in which you are at ease and yet still attentive. And you may wish to close your eyes, that is always my practice, or just to gaze softly into the distance at something that doesn't claim your focus and attention. I always like to start with a certain inventory within to see if we can let go of the places that normally prevent us from breathing fully in and out, and even beginning at the tops of our heads, kind of just physically moving our heads around and thinking about untensing our foreheads, or releasing our foreheads would be a better way to phrase it, to release our jaws, our tongues. They work very hard all day, speaking, eating, holding emotions, expressing emotions. Let us see if we can just let the jaw unhinge and the tongue with it. Our necks can always use something of a roll around, just to remind those kinks to unkink themselves. And sometimes the noises our necks make are quite revelatory. And if you can just let your neck drop in front, in the back, up, and then our shoulders. Nice way to let them go is to scrunch them up to your ears, even hold them tight, and then release. Just release. And allow that release to flow into your upper arms, your elbows. You might just wave your arms around a little bit. Not in grand motions, but maybe just smaller motions at your side. your lower arms. You can twirl your wrists, wiggle your fingers, stretch your hands out, perhaps, bring them into fists, stretch them out again, and allow them just to lay gently in your laps. I would then turn our attention to our insides, especially heading down. Certainly our lungs we will address in a moment, but certainly our tummies, where I know I carry a lot of my tension. It grabs my stomach and holds it. So perhaps we can just let go, just to feel what that is like, to let go. Our waists and hips, imagine at our thighs, or we could even rub the tops of them as we imagine them letting go. Perhaps move our knees back and forth a bit. Our lower legs we might twirl with and then our ankles, our feet up, down, around. Wiggle our toes. Oh, that feels good. And then let us just consciously, attentively breathe in. I was reminded this week that one of the ways we can meditate with breathing is not so much a big breath to start, although I kind of like to make that separation between just breathing unconsciously and beginning to breathe with consciousness and mindfulness. But we can just breathe simply in and out. The point is to focus on it, to focus. Whatever it is, however, whatever your pattern is, whatever your rhythm is, just to think about it. And if that induces a large breath for you, by all means take it. It does for me, at least to begin. But stay with it. Stay with it as it goes in. Where are you feeling it? Where might it be going? How does it make your throat feel, your nose feel, your lips perhaps, your tongue as it comes in and goes down your throat? And then you might just imagine it going to any number of places in your body, first to the lungs, of course. Let us allow them to expand as they wish and not hold on, not be fearful to take a breath. Let's take the breath. And then follow it as it goes out. How does that feel? What is the sensation that we feel in the body as the breath goes out again? And we may have no rhythm at all in this at the beginning of our practice. But if we stay with that breath, if we keep following it into our bodies and then out again, and even at rest, as we may not even feel it for a second or two as it has left the body. And then when the impulse comes to breathe again, we do so. In and out. In and out. If it helps to breathe in on a count of 4, 5, 6, 3, whatever, by all means, use that. And then explore. How many counts does it take to exhale? You can be curious about this breath. that is keeping us alive at this very moment. Let us stay with it. Feeling it travel to our insides. Feeling it expand our insides. And then feeling it emerge. We might even rest at the bottom of the exhalation or the end of the exhalation. As the weeks go by, I continue to look for sources of hope and perspective. It is interesting to me to notice that every time our people have suffered a major disaster, historically, redemption of some kind eventually follows. This is not meant to minimize the suffering and frequent dislocation. The suffering is very real. We have known death, destruction, expulsion, enslavement, and persecutions more times than anyone might care to remember or to recount. And I would hazard to say more times than any other people on this earth. But as we grope for something positive that might come out of this time, there is precedent to consider. Going back rather far, when the ancient kingdom of Judea, with Jerusalem and the Second Temple, were finally destroyed by the Romans, we're talking 70 CE, major segments of the population were exiled, enslaved, or slaughtered. It was the end of our existence as a sovereign nation in ancient times. 1,000 years of history as a people in the ancient land of Israel ended with the Romans. Our entire religious, political, military, economic, and psychological existence also ended. Without the temple, how would we worship? How would we offer sacrifices to God? How would we observe the festivals? Jewish life as we knew it was no longer possible. We should have gone into exile in Rome and walked off of the pages of history. There was nothing left. We could no longer function as we had for centuries. At the very moment that we should have disappeared into oblivion, like every other ancient power did, we were transforming Judaism into something that could survive into a distant 21st century. We became a nation of students, of learners, with a God that transcended earthly boundaries, and with observances and rituals that could be done in the home or in the newly created synagogues. While we longed to return to Zion and Jerusalem, while we looked forward to rebuilding the temple, we found teachers, judges, and arbiters and the rabbis who could debate and decide issues of Jewish law and practice, especially as we confronted a constantly changing world in constantly changing locations around the globe. We founded synagogues as places of worship, assembly, and study to take the place of the temple that had defined us as a people for 1,000 years. At the moment that Judaism should have died, stateless, landless, without physical symbols or leadership, except in our yearnings, we found a way to change, to adapt, and to survive into an infinite future. With the destruction of the temple and its priesthood, that conducted our national religious and political life, a new leadership arose in the form of rabbis who became the leaders and interpreters of Jewish life as Jews moved into countries all over the known world and needed guidance as to how to live their Jewish lives in strange places and in the contemporary world the Torah could never have envisioned. The rabbis of the Talmud and subsequent commentaries, that's the group we call the rabbis, found a way to continuously reinterpret our laws and values so that they could be lived in constantly changing circumstances. We not only survived the catastrophic loss of country and religious and political center, we found a way to grow, to continuously adapt, and to thrive. We have faced other periods of dire catastrophe, of great suffering and displacement, even of the threat of extinction. I recognize that it can be small comfort to affirm that given all we have been through, we are still here. One would hope that at some point we would not have to justify our existence or be grateful for what should be the inalienable right to be. At a time of darkness, however, when we search for comfort and assurance that there is a way forward, that the light will come again, I think it can be helpful to remind ourselves that this isn't new. We've been here before. We can sustain this time, and we can look forward to better days ahead. As some of you know, I frequently turn to the words and wisdom of the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks of Great Britain. I may even have quoted these very words before, and I am thinking about quoting them in every meditation going forward. I'll see if you agree with me. He wrote, "To be a Jew is to be an agent of hope in a world that is serially threatened by despair." To be a Jew is to be an agent of hope in a world that is serially threatened by despair. Every ritual, every mitzvah, every syllable of the Jewish story, every element of Jewish law is a protest against escapism, resignation, or the blind acceptance of fate. Judaism is a sustained struggle, the greatest ever known, against a world that is in the name of the world that could be, should be, but is not yet. Judaism is the religion, and Israel, the home of hope. Hope in Jewish life is not a passive wishing for something to be or to change. Hope in Jewish life is a commitment to do everything possible to help the wished-for entity happen. And if that isn't possible, it is the commitment to be the very best individuals we can possibly be and to make this world a kinder, gentler place, one smile at a time, one helping hand at a time. In a paraphrase of a beautiful sermon by Rabbi Daniel Levin that he delivered on Rosh Hashanah of 2022, I believe, it was hope that sustained our people through 40 years in the desert. It was hope that inspired them to embrace a new kind of Judaism after the destruction of the temple, Jerusalem, and the ancient kingdom of Israel. It was hope that they clung to during the forced conversion persecution, destruction, execution, and expulsion of the Spanish Inquisition. It was hope of which they sang, even as they marched into the gas chambers of the Holocaust. And after 2,000 years, it was hope that built the sovereign state of Israel. It is hope that must be our daily companion as we try to live these anxious days with grace, dignity, compassion, and gratitude. And with the words of Alfred Lord Tennyson, encouraging us to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Let us breathe, resuming our places of meditative ease and attentiveness. Let us breathe in that hope that is part of our DNA if we are to embrace the words of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, Zichrono Livracha. And let us exhale the despair that so easily comes upon us these days, the anxiety and worry. We breathe in life. We do that every time we take a breath. And life for Jews is hope. And let us breathe out anything that constricts that life within us. Let us stay with that breath, that life-giving breath, as it comes into our bodies. As it leaves our bodies. And as the next breath comes in. I hope you will continue to breathe in and out, even after this session is formally ended. By way of conclusion and perhaps a benediction for the coming week, I offer you this prayer by a favorite poet, the Irish John O'Donoghue. It is entitled For Love in a Time of Conflict. When the gentleness between you hardens and you fall out of your belonging with each other, may the depths you have reached hold you still. When no true word can be said or heard, and you mirror each other in the script of hurt, when even the silence has become raw and torn, may you hear again an echo of your first music. When the weave of affection starts to unravel and anger begins to sear the ground between you, before this weather of grief invites the black seed of bitterness to find root, may your souls come to kiss. Now is the time for one of you to be gracious, to allow a kindness beyond thought and hurt, reach out with sure hands to take the chalice of your love and carry it carefully through this echoless waste until this winter pilgrimage leads you towards the gateway to spring. May the week ahead be one in which we can let go of those negative feelings so masterfully articulated by John O'Donohue, and let us replace them with hopes of renewal, of regeneration, of springtime. I look forward to seeing you next time. God bless.